In this video, we're going to be checking out the new Hasbro Marvel Legends. This is Marvel's Tombstone. For this guy's included accessories. The only thing you're really getting is the Build-A-Figure or Build-A-Wing piece for Vulture. Much like the other figure that we looked at, I think it was the Beetle, coming with this little VTOL fan. Tombstone comes with the exact same thing, just for the other wing. And it just kind of sits. Kind of just sits in the little... doesn't really clip into anything. Nor, I guess, could it, because it has to be able to move up and down, but it sits just in the recessed areas of the wing. Nothing really overly exciting to talk about there, so we'll just move that to the side. As for Tombstone, not a bad looking figure, where they don't seem to give him as much the paint. He makes up for it in a pretty cool head sculpt. My biggest complaint with the figure itself is that he seems too short. Once again, Marvel Legends relying on the smaller, chunkier build for Tombstone here. Wiki's got him height-wise about 6'7", and I don't see 6'7" in this sized figure. The culprit is not necessarily the top torso, but the utilizing of the smaller, stubbier legs that we've seen with other figures such as Sabretooth and Venom. They're just way too small of a leg. And in fact, though not necessarily the greatest of comparisons, we reach off camera and we'll grab Spider-Man here. Again, Spider-Man's a child, but even still, well, actually, a one better comparison. Let's move him over. Let's bring in Beetle, because we've just recently looked at Beetle. Again, Beetle is a smaller figure by comparing him to Tombstone, but I feel like Tombstone just reads a little too chunky and still a little too short for my liking. I couldn't even tell you how tall Beetle is in comics, but even if he is an average height, Tombstone at 6'7" should be towering over him. And I feel like this is just the wrong body build to be using for the character. What I would have liked, much like the old cartoons, is a much more broader torso, and maybe not a skinny leg, but a more average leg, just to throw his proportions to a more towering stance. His head sculpt is actually, again, pretty good. Let's just bring the camera up there. Yeah, I do really like the head sculpt with his albino skin. Very distinct characteristics here for Tombstone. I like I like the face sculpt. The paint's pretty good. It gets a little muddy around here where it doesn't really look like it knows what it wants to do. It sits so heavily relying on this bluish gray that you don't see a gradient of color. Wish that it had been more the little bit of the white, and then making use of this bluish gray in there as well. But the bluish gray sort of just dominates everything on the torso point of the figure. The rest of the figure is, well, it's kind of like a purple-based gray, borderline almost a black. It's not a bad color, but you see so much of it on the figure that, again, there's not really a lot to break it up. There's some coloring here in the buckle portion of his ankles, as well as in his wrists, and of course, he's got the coloring there in his belt. But there's not really a lot of other color that can be broken up here on Tombstone. I wouldn't mind it so much. In fact, the coloring doesn't bother me. It bothers me more so that it's being used on this style of torso. His collar is a denser plastic, so it has a little bit more rigid nature to it. I've currently got him just in like an arm-crossed stance, but because he doesn't have any other interchangeable hands, he's always relying on closed fists to get the job done. And at least one thing could be said, he does have double-hinged elbows, so you get a little extra oomph from your posability. Speaking of your posability, though, he does have the ball joint in the head, but also has a very tried and true reliable hinge going there as well, so you can move the head up and down also. Speaking of up and down, he also has the upper torso crunch, a waist swivel, He does have the hinged elbow or hinged shoulders, so those hinge outward as well as an all the way around motion. Swivel in the bicep, as we've already discussed, a double hinge in the elbow. And he's got a rotation and hinge in the hands. Then when you get down to the legs luckily have a nice split action there going. A forward and back motion on the legs, a top swivel cut on the thigh, a double hinge on your knee, a swivel at the almost mid-calf area, a hinge up and down on the foot, and ankle pivot there to boot as well. I actually suspected, did a little self-deducing here, and I suspected that Tombstone was actually going to be the figure I was really going to like from this wave. I've always really liked Tombstone, debuting I think in around 1988, so it was around the time that I was big into comics, and especially collecting the Wall Crawler's adventures. So Tombstone really was a must-have, I think, pickup for me. Ultimately, looking at him, he's a good-looking figure, but he has a couple of shortcomings, one of which being just the excessive need for this dark, it's kind of bluish gray making up his torso. I wish that was broken up a little bit more. I wish a little bit more of the pale elements of his skin came through and didn't rely so much on the bluer coloring to make up the majority of his skin tone. The coloring of his outfit is passable, just by nature of the way that the character's design is anyways, but I really don't like the constant use of this particular build. For me, specifically, it just makes the figure look really short, really stocky, and it makes him look like he's off proportion. It looks like his arms are much longer than they need to be, just because his legs seem so incredibly short. Still a nice looking figure. I might say it's probably within my top 3 so far of the figures in this set. I'm trying to think of the other figures in this wave. There might be ones that might trump this. I really do like the head sculpt, so I think Tombstone might be possibly the top 3. Will he make the top 3 though? You're just going to have to watch the rest of the videos to find out. In the meantime, today we were checking out the Hasbro Marvel Legends. This was the Spider-Man Homecoming wave, or the Build-A-Wing wave. That sounds so exciting. We're looking today at Tombstone. By the way, if you guys haven't had a chance to subscribe to this channel, what are you waiting for? Click that little subscribe button down below, and you won't miss any future videos making it up onto the interweb. As always as well, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.